My best friend ended our 3-year friendship, and I've never felt more relieved. To provide some background, I'm a 16-year-old female, and my former best friend, whom I will refer to as Sarah, is also 16. We established our close friendship in late 2021 and quickly became very close. I got along well with her family, even meeting her extended relatives, and initially, my family liked her as well. Sarah was humorous and self-assured, which drew me to her, as we discovered many shared interests. It's important to note that Sarah has experienced some difficult times that have affected her mental health, and I have consistently offered my support. However, cracks in our friendship began to appear around 2023. Having dealt with toxic friendships most of my life, I struggled to advocate for myself and still find conflict uncomfortable. Over time, Sarah made her disdain for any boyfriends I had quite apparent, which I initially interpreted as her protective instincts since some of my past relationships were not healthy. Eventually, she began expressing her distaste for nearly all my other close friends, except for herself. Sarah would frequently admit her feelings to me, and she found it challenging to maintain friendships, often falling out with others, leaving her with a limited circle of close friends. By late 2023, I discovered that she had been speaking negatively about me behind my back, which was hurtful, but I tried to move past it because I genuinely cared for her. The situation escalated to the point where I often felt like I was tiptoeing around her. She would release her negative emotions onto me, and if I did anything to irritate her, she would ignore me for days. I often felt judged and unable to be my true self in her presence. Many factors contributed to my exhaustion and constant anxiety that Sarah disapproved of me, leading me to cry to my parents about our situation almost weekly. When I attempted to create distance between us sitting with her and a few friends who didn't engage with me during lunch and breaks, she reacted with anger. My parents started to notice this, especially Sarah's attitude toward my mother. She often overstepped boundaries by using my belongings without asking and consuming my family's food without permission. Other friends began to recognize the toll it was taking on me, noting the hurtful comments and actions that were depleting my spirit. Occasionally, Sarah was a fantastic friend, treating me to gifts, orchestrating nice gestures, and even taking me on holiday. There were moments when our friendship felt wonderful. However, the negative aspects began to eclipse the positive ones. As we moved into this year, I felt increasingly drained from trying to keep up with her fluctuating moods. It was evident we were drifting apart, prioritizing different friendships. Still, we managed to have fun together at concerts, and I continued to consider her my best friend. This culminated in my 16th birthday party, an event I had eagerly anticipated. I was co-hosting it with another close friend, whom I will refer to as Maddie. Maddie and I have been friends since we were infants, and with our birthdays so close together, co-hosting made sense. The party took place at Maddie's house, with about 25 attendees, including myself, Maddie, and Sarah. The day was filled with excitement as we decorated together. However, when Sarah arrived, she acted strangely toward me, a behavior my parents had warned me about, which I attributed to nerves since she wasn't especially close to many guests. Sarah went to Maddie's room for a while, which disappointed me, but I initially ignored it as everyone else appeared to be enjoying themselves. When our ordered pizzas arrived, she came downstairs to grab some food but quickly retreated upstairs again. Everyone else and I were left puzzled as she sat in silence on her phone, uninterested in engaging with anyone. Some of her friends approached me, expressing that Sarah deemed the party boring. This deeply upset me, prompting me to go upstairs, sit with Sarah in Maddie's room, and ask if she was all right. She responded with one-word answers, so I decided to leave and return downstairs. Despite the party lasting 5 hours, Sarah remained up there, refusing to come down even when several of us, including myself, invited her to join us. At one point, she even left the house through the front door for about 30 minutes without informing anyone of her whereabouts. She missed the opportunity to join us for the cake's candle blowing, despite being my supposed best friend. In a moment of frustration and intoxication, I broke down in tears, feeling that this behavior was the final straw. My friends comforted me, and many shared their own feelings about Sarah, saying they had never particularly liked her, especially witnessing her treatment of others. When Sarah departed, I attempted to hug her goodbye, but she avoided the embrace, offered no thanks for the invitation, and left in silence. The two girls accompanying her home messaged me, relaying how discourteous she had been during their walk. The following day, I texted her to express my feelings calmly, explaining how hurt I was by her behavior. She responded with an apology, but claimed she physically couldn't come down and insisted that if I had come up to talk to her, she would have wanted to join us. She added that I should recognize her actions stemmed from deeper issues. Our discussion quickly escalated into an argument. In summary, she reiterated her inability to come down, stating that with all we had experienced together, I should understand her struggles. She did apologize, but often followed it with excuses that shifted the focus onto herself instead of addressing how her actions affected me. Even as I clarified my reasons for being upset missing the cake, appearing disinterested, and not expressing gratitude, she continued to deflect and guilt-trip me, telling me I should be more understanding. When I said I needed time, Sarah reacted with passive aggression, dismissing my feelings and sending voice notes about how she had always been there for me. The next day, my friends inquired about the situation, and I provided them with a brief overview. Upon discovering this, Sarah texted me, furious that I was discussing our issues and portraying her negatively. I clarified that I had shared my feelings with only a select few, and was aware that she had also confided in others, and she suggested we should cease communication, claiming I focused only on myself. I respected her request and responded with a paragraph, acknowledging that we had some challenges. I expressed that I felt somewhat unappreciated and unheard in the friendship, though this was not an attack on her character. I agreed that giving each other space was advisable, recognizing that we had grown apart and held different perspectives. I conveyed that I still cared about her, but was hurt by the recent events, believing it would be best to concentrate on other friendships. Sarah then argued that it was unfair I hadn't provided enough context or a clear explanation of my feelings. She claimed that she didn't truly want to end our friendship, but would accept it if that was my wish. I replied, offering a more detailed account of my thoughts and reiterating that I was still open to friendship, but needed time and space to process my feelings. She assured me she could give me time and space. However, she specified that she wouldn't be able to re-establish the friendship afterward, as she struggled to distance herself and then reconnect. I pointed out that if she couldn't allow me to take the necessary time to heal and work on our friendship again, that might indicate personal issues she needed to address. Sarah grew upset, insisting I didn't understand her situation, echoing our previous argument. I reassured her I comprehended her perspective, but still required time. Ultimately, she decided to terminate the friendship entirely, concluding our conversation. Since the end of our friendship, I have experienced a profound sense of relief, realizing I no longer had to endure a situation that made me feel this way. I have been able to dedicate more time to my other friendships, join a gym, and concentrate on my academic work, particularly with significant exams on the horizon. Although I am still saddened by how things concluded, I genuinely believe it was for the best. Recently, I learned from a mutual friend who once had a close relationship with Sarah, which has since deteriorated that throughout my time with Sarah. She had attempted to get me uninvited from gatherings, discouraged others from inviting me, and made derogatory comments about me that I found disturbing. Hearing that she spoke ill of me while we were still friends was painful, especially since I cared deeply about her. Nonetheless, I cannot say I am overly surprised. Ultimately, I am grateful to be moving on and focusing on aspects of life that genuinely bring me joy. I apologize for the extended nature of this message, but I hope you found it engaging. Story 2. Final year in the UK. I realized one job and no friends mean just surviving each day drowning in laundry, loneliness, and takeout. Attending college has been the most challenging period of my life, and I am now in my final year. During the first 3 years, I pursued my studies in my home country. It wasn't until this past September, during my last year, that I arrived in the United Kingdom to continue my education. From the outset, I realized university would not resemble school, where you effortlessly form friendships. In this environment, everyone is preoccupied with their own lives. Very few individuals have the time or motivation to include someone new. If you do not initiate contact, you risk becoming unnoticed. I had an awareness of this situation before my arrival, but knowing something intellectually and confronting it practically are entirely different experiences. I acknowledged that I would need to manage everything independently: laundry, shopping, cooking, cleaning, and job searching. That much was clear. However, I did not anticipate how quickly tasks would accumulate if I allowed them to slide. One missed grocery outing could lead to an entire week of takeout meals. A few nights of, "I will do laundry tomorrow," results in running out of clean clothes. Dirty dishes stack up, dust gathers, and suddenly, my living space feels chaotic. It is not that I dislike these chores, but there are days when I return home from work or classes completely drained. I may sit down for 5 minutes, only to realize the day has slipped away. I recently secured a job, but it is not substantial. I work at Sainsbury's, primarily stocking shelves, which is as low interaction as a role can be. My shift begins at 4 a.m., resulting in a very altered schedule. I wake up at 2 a.m., prepare myself, leave for work, and finish by 10 a.m. Afterward, I go directly to college. By the time I return home, I collapse for a few hours, waking up around 6 p.m. That is when I prepare my first and only meal of the day, eat, play some games for a bit, and then go to sleep around 11 p.m. so I can wake up at 2 a.m. to repeat the cycle. It is not the worst routine, but it feels isolating. I rarely see anyone outside of work and classes, and when I do, it does not change my situation. Financially, my circumstances are similarly bleak. The wages I earn merely suffice to cover rent and bills, leaving nothing for discretionary spending. I have tried to save, but more often than not, I resort to ordering takeout due to a lack of energy for cooking. It is not that cooking is overly difficult. It is just that after waking up in the evening, I lack the motivation to stand in the kitchen, especially with my flatmates already present. While they are kind individuals, there are no conflicts with them personally having moved in late. Their social groups had already formed. They all come from the same country, while I am an international student, resulting in very little common ground for conversation. I am not suggesting they deliberately exclude me, but it feels as if there is no space for me to belong. I often wonder what it would be like to be welcomed into their circles, to have someone to converse with and share laughter, but those scenarios never occur. The loneliness intensifies whenever I am not occupied with work or school, and it becomes challenging to overlook. I additionally require some leftover funds for socializing, yet there is almost nothing remaining after I pay my bills. The small amount I have after covering rent, food, and basic necessities does not extend far enough to allow for any leisure activities. I cannot even afford a simple night out with others. It feels as though my existence revolves around survival. There is no opportunity for enjoyment or shared experiences with others. At work, the situation is quite similar. The environment is pleasant, no toxic management or irritating coworkers, but it is quiet. No one really engages in conversations. Many of my coworkers are middle-aged mothers who have been in this job for years. A few individuals are my age, but since the work itself does not necessitate conversation, everyone simply comes in, completes their tasks, and leaves without any real social interaction. Academically, I am managing well. I would not say I struggle with my coursework. In fact, I am on track to achieve a first-class degree. I have always been able to keep up with my studies, but it is the aspects outside of academia that present challenges. Collaborative projects are particularly difficult. I usually receive special permission to work on them independently, which I do not mind, but it feels embarrassing to always be designated to a group instead of naturally integrating into one. It serves as another reminder that I lack connections here. I am aware that I am not a bad person. I can engage in meaningful conversations and be a good friend if given the opportunity. However, I have always been somewhat shy and introverted. The prospect of putting myself out there and facing rejection is unsettling, and I tend to avoid it whenever possible. Relocating to a new country, where it seems everyone has established their connections, has only amplified these feelings. I was already grappling with my self-image when I arrived here. I weigh approximately 110 kilograms and am 6 feet tall, with distinct Indian features and a noticeable patch of acne on my cheek that stands out. There is no halo effect that might facilitate the formation of friendships or relationships. People often judge based on first impressions, and mine does not stand out. This has consistently been a challenge for me, and in this environment, it only reinforces the notion that I do not belong. I even attempted to use dating applications, but after 5 months, I received only 3 matches, none of whom ever initiated a conversation with me. I also tried Bumble in search of friends, as well as an app called Meetup, but that ended up being futile as well. It is difficult to forge any genuine connections when it appears as if everyone else is merely moving through the motions of their own lives. I initially made efforts to engage with others. I joined various societies, attended events, and attempted to initiate small talk, but none of it yielded substantial results. Most individuals already had their established circles, and breaking into them proved challenging. Even when conversations occurred, they seldom evolved into anything more significant. Eventually, I grew weary of attempting. It began to feel pointless. I had hoped for a different experience upon starting university. I anticipated a fresh start, a new chapter, but instead, I find myself merely counting down the days until graduation. Work, study, sleep, and repeat. Some days, I struggle to remember what day it is. Everything seems to blend together. Perhaps life will be distinct after university, perhaps it will not. At this point, I no longer know. I do not find myself suicidal or anything of the sort, but I am simply exhausted with life. I lack ambitions and dreams merely existing because that is what I am expected to do. I would not wish this kind of existence upon anyone, not even my worst enemy. I do not desire to end my life, but I sometimes contemplate the possibility of an accidental misfortune. It is a peculiar thought, yet it occasionally crosses my mind when everything feels overwhelming. I understand that it is not a healthy mindset, but it is difficult to ignore those feelings when I am trapped in this cycle of loneliness and isolation. I am reluctant to continue feigning happiness when it is not genuine. I am uncertain about what lies ahead. I do not know if circumstances will ever alter or if this feeling will persist indefinitely, yet I suppose I must simply press on. It is incredibly draining, and I wish there were an easier path to navigate through each day. Story 3. I broke up with my girlfriend over my parents' manipulation, discovering later they orchestrated the whole mess. OMG, I was played. There are numerous elements in this narrative that require some background information to be fully understood, so I will begin with a brief glossary to help convey the story without the need for constant explanations. I am a musician who performs in a band alongside my sibling and father. We frequently play at various events. I previously worked as a content creator on YouTube as a live streamer. I am currently employed as a social media marketing consultant. I apologize if this seems disjointed. I am genuinely trembling as I write. Moving out and the illusion of respect. I am a 29-year-old man, and I left my parents' home in November 2024. Before my departure, I finally reconciled with my mother, and for the first time in quite a while, everything felt right with the world. I believed my parents were finally showing me the respect I had long desired. That feeling lasted until January, during my birthday. My parents never approved of my current girlfriend. They favored my previous partner, even though she had fundamentally damaged my content creation career by spreading falsehoods about me on X, previously Twitter, 2 years prior. She made unfounded accusations of infidelity and even alleged that I physically assaulted her. Both claims were completely false. Since I had reconciled with my mother prior to moving out, she began to instill doubts in my mind regarding my girlfriend. She repeatedly told me that my girlfriend was unsupportive and was merely using me for financial gain. At one point, I had to sell my iPhone 14 Pro Max for car parts, and my mother insisted even to this day that my girlfriend had pressured me into giving her that phone. My birthday that wasn't mine, everything reached a climax on January 18th. My father, brother, and I had a gig at a bar, and since my birthday was just 2 days away, my mother decided to turn the gig into a birthday party without consulting me first. She invited everyone she was acquainted with, but because it was such a last-minute decision, I did not get the opportunity to invite my own friends. To make matters worse, my mother made it clear that she did not want my girlfriend to attend, so I chose not to invite her. That hardly mattered anyway, because my girlfriend had already informed me she would not be attending due to her work night shift. It was a perfectly legitimate excuse, But once the celebration began, I felt intensely alone. Everyone my mother invited was accompanied by someone, and I felt like an outsider at my own birthday party. My mother noticed my demeanor and seized the opportunity to reinforce her viewpoint, telling me, "See, your girlfriend isn't as supportive as you believe." The breaking point after the gig, we planned to stay until all the other bands had finished performing. However, my father became exceedingly intoxicated, prompting my mother to request that I drive him home, saying she was counting on me to look after him while she took the other vehicle to transport her guests. During the ride back, my father, in his inebriated state, ranted about how foolish I was for remaining with my girlfriend and expressed his longing for my ex. I remained silent and drove without speaking. When we arrived home, I assisted him to bed and waited for him to doze off before proceeding to my grandmother's house next door, where I intended to rest before returning to my apartment the following day. While I was outside smoking on my grandmother's porch, my mother called me frantically my father was missing. She told me he had taken the car and driven away. I immediately blamed myself, believing I had failed to keep an eye on him. I wanted to go searching for him, but recognized I needed to calm down first, so I attempted to reach my girlfriend for some encouragement. She did not answer, perhaps because she was occupied with work calls, and that's when I made the gravest error of my life. In my state of panic, every word my mother had ever uttered about my girlfriend flooded back into my mind. Every accusation, every doubt resurfaced. My father's drunken tirade only fueled my inner turmoil. Without considering the consequences, I sent my girlfriend a breakup text, echoing the reasons my mother had implanted in my mind that she was uncaring and unsupportive. Afterward, I went out to locate my father and ultimately found him at a nearby motel. Crisis averted, or so I thought. The truth comes out a month has elapsed since that night. My mother believes I am happier now that my girlfriend is no longer in the picture. The reality, I attempted to move on by engaging with people on Reddit, but no casual encounters could alleviate the profound emptiness I felt. I began to miss my girlfriend, and for the first time, I questioned everything. Last week, I visited my grandmother's house to do some laundry and seek advice. That is when she revealed the truth. That entire night had been orchestrated by my parents. My mother was aware I would feel lonely at the gig and exploited it as a chance to plant doubts about my girlfriend in my mind. My father was never actually lost. My mother knew precisely where he would go when intoxicated. He always checked into the same motel. My mother understood how much I despised failing and expected I would seek solace from my girlfriend. She gambled on the possibility that my girlfriend might not be available to answer my call, and she succeeded. Upon realizing what had transpired, I broke down. I felt utterly manipulated. Then I began to reflect on my entire life and noticed a pattern. They had been controlling me for years, shaping me into their ideal son while simultaneously downplaying my achievements to keep me dependent. A lifetime of manipulation. I started cataloging everything they had done to mold my life according to their desires. They coerced me into drumming. I never desired to be a drummer. I yearned to be a frontman, an entertainer. However, my father insisted I give up singing, claiming I sounded like a nasally Bob Dylan. My mother, who once tried and failed to learn the drums, imposed her unfulfilled dream onto me. I have been playing semi-professionally for 20 years since I was 9, and I have developed chronic back pain, typically associated with drummers in their 50s. My mother frequently guilt-trips me into continuing, asserting it is the only thing that connects me with my dad. 2. They never encouraged my interests. I have a passion for cars and enjoy working on them, even though it is a financial drain. My parents constantly criticized me for wasting money. In contrast, my father collects guitars valued at over $100,000 each, many of which I purchased for him at my mother's insistence, believing he would appreciate them. He currently owns 12 guitars, but only plays 2 or 3, not even the ones I gifted him. 3. They ignored my accomplishments. I played basketball in high school and was deeply passionate about it, yet they never supported me or attended my games. In the meantime, my father proudly shares posts about my brother's basketball endeavors on Facebook. 4. They disregarded my academic success. I graduated from one of the top 4 universities in the country, a feat I accomplished on my own, as my parents refused to fund my education. At one point, My mother even requested I take a leave of absence, claiming she couldn't afford my enrollment. I worked at a call center to pay for my education, but my mother now takes credit for financing my final year. My father did not even acknowledge my graduation. Moving forward, there are countless other instances, but their manipulation of my relationship, the one I truly valued, was the final straw. I intend to sever all contact with my family after November, once our band concludes a touring deal that culminates in Cebu. Regarding my girlfriend, I will try to win her back, although I completely understand if she prefers to have no association with me. Story 4. Thinking about ending a friendship, F22 to F21. I have been friends with this girl for nearly 3 years, but recently, I feel like she does not respect my boundaries and continues to make comparisons that unsettle me. She often rationalizes her decisions by referring to others and fails to take responsibility for her own actions. One of the most significant examples of this was her response to a situation with one of my former professors. Initially, I had a complicated relationship with him. At first, I was fine with him, but over time, I began to feel that he was manipulative, dismissive, and possibly even stalking me online. I was still trying to sort through my feelings regarding the situation, but instead of allowing me to reach my own conclusion, which was deciding to take no action and focus on my life, she essentially compelled me to report him. She did this by informing the dean of all the details without my knowledge, and when I confronted her about it, all she could say was, "Oops, sorry, I just have a big mouth." She kept urging me to report him, claiming I had to do it because she felt it was dishonest not to, even though I was not emotionally prepared and was still trying to understand my own feelings about the matter. It felt as if she was seizing control of something that profoundly influenced me, rather than allowing me to address it in my own manner. Unfortunately, this incident had a terrible outcome for me, but that is a story for another time. This is not the only instance where she has behaved in such a manner. Recently, she has been discussing a new friend, Kim, frequently and using her as a benchmark for me. Out of the blue, she asked, "Kim drinks every day. How much do you drink?" As if that was even mildly relevant to my life. When I informed her that I do not drink and have my reasons, her response felt dismissive and almost sarcastic, as she replied, "No, not lame at all." It felt like she was suggesting that I was a loser for making a personal choice that does not align with hers. This exchange also triggered distressing memories for me. I previously struggled with substance abuse to the extent that I nearly overdosed multiple times, and she is fully aware of that. The irony in this situation is that she initially expressed a desire to be friends with me because I do not drink excessively. She is an alcoholic and thought that by spending time with me, it would help keep her in line, as I prefer visiting bookstores and arcades over clubs and bars. Nevertheless, she continues to drink heavily, to the point of blacking out on occasion. It is not just casual drinking, it has become a habitual behavior, and she acknowledges that it is unhealthy, yet she persists. On one occasion, she became intoxicated at my home and broke my microwave. She barely acknowledged it afterward, as if it were inconsequential. It is frustrating because I feel as though I constantly have to clean up after her messes physically, emotionally, or mentally. Moreover, she tends to make decisions based on the actions of others. If a friend drinks excessively, she does the same. If someone smokes, she starts to smoke more. She justifies her behavior by stating, "Well, so-and-so does it. It just rubs off on me." This astounds me because it reflects the reasoning of a child. I have genuinely attempted to discuss healthier coping strategies with her, but she seldom pays attention. Another issue that has been troubling me is the financial imbalance in our discussions. I work diligently, often holding more than one job, and I need to be cautious with my finances, yet she seems oblivious to this fact. She frequently talks about spending money extravagantly, whether on alcohol, dating, or impulsive purchases, because her parents reimburse her. She even asked me once if mine did, which I found to be a ridiculous question for someone who is already 22 years old. Yet, she then makes remarks about my financial choices, like when she texted me, "My mom is nagging me to find out where you got your new job." It felt intrusive, as if she was probing into my financial affairs instead of simply expressing happiness that I secured a new job. She does not seem to comprehend that not everyone has the privilege of being careless with money. Additionally, she demonstrates considerable insecurity about her appearance and frequently asks me if she looks overweight. I am larger myself, so when she asks this, it feels as though she is suggesting that being overweight is the worst possible outcome. It is painful because I recognize her need for validation, but at the same time, it makes me feel worse about myself. I have never commented on her body and have always assured her that she is beautiful, even though she often seeks confirmation that she is overweight. Regardless, she continues to lament how repulsive or enormous she feels, and I struggle to find a response. It is exhausting to constantly provide her with reassurance while feeling that my very presence contradicts her fears about her body. She also exhibits a peculiar pattern in her relationships. Since her ex-boyfriend ended their relationship in November, she has been incessantly using dating apps, desperately seeking someone new. The most concerning aspect, she even began dating her cousin right after the breakup. I truly do not know how to respond to that. It appears that she cannot tolerate being alone, so she clings to whoever is available, even when it is highly inappropriate. Her only comment about that was, "I'm such a mess." The reality is that I do care about her, and I have tried to assist her in making better choices. However, when I attempt to offer guidance, she either dismisses it or seeks advice from the most unreliable sources. She continues to make self-destructive decisions and appears to rationalize them based on the influence of others or her emotional state. Furthermore, she insists on reconnecting with her ex-boyfriend, who assaulted her, and when I try to express how unhealthy that is, she essentially ignores me. It is painful to watch someone you genuinely care about making foolish choices, even when they are aware of the consequences. We used to have a solid friendship before all of this turmoil began. The most disheartening aspect is that she is in therapy, yet I honestly do not foresee any changes. At this juncture, I feel utterly exhausted. I rarely bring up my feelings to her because I doubt she would genuinely listen, and I fear she would respond dismissively if I did. I have always supported her, but when I explain my own struggles, she provides these vague, passive-aggressive remarks like, "I feel so grateful now." I am uncertain if I am being overly paranoid, but I can no longer shake the feeling that this friendship has become draining. How does one even address such a situation? I am simply prepared to walk away.